First of all, we have to try to define them. What are soft skills? And the next slide talks about them being a complex set of personal qualities that help make an individual a positive and contributing member of any organization. Well, what does that mean? Basically, it's a lot of personality traits. It's who you are. It's a group of things that you really can't teach easily. A lot of people are very natural. They have emotional intelligence. They come with soft skills. They were raised correctly, please and thank you, and caring about individuals. And they will they'll be able to translate to how you work and interact with others, and support situational awareness. And they enhance an individual's ability to get the job done. And the next slide has a number of examples. And what you can see are many here, starting with interpersonal skills. And Matt, the next slide, there we go. Attitude, communication, flexibility. I'll give you a moment to take a look at these, but when you think about how many there are, you have to think about how you individually come across in not only interviews and in jobs that you've had in the past, but what you want to bring to the next job. And so why are they important is the next slide. And here's why. Because they will foster connections. They will help build relationships between people, which decreases interpersonal issues in the workplace. I have always said to my daughters and others as a manager for a number of years that you have to learn to work with people, and that essentially people are interviewing for their next job every time they come to work, because you just never know what opportunities might come upon you. And if you foster these connections, build these relationships, and therefore decrease some interpersonal issues or conflict, you will be remembered by others or seen as somebody who is a team player, who really is easy to work with, and somebody they would want on their team. And they might find that they would have opportunities to interview for new, different jobs. So they increase the likelihood of being hired, experiencing on-the-job success, and being promoted. Often they are the reason employers decide whether to hire or keep or promote an employee. And the first impressions that interviewers have are really within less than a minute, often seconds, when you come in for an interview. So it's so important to, along with soft skills, come in with a clean, nice clothes, interview clothes, and come with a smile and come with a positive attitude. If not polished, these can limit your chances of a successful career. Soft skills weren't talked about years ago. This is a relatively new concept, but it really is something that we're just putting a name on what has been in the past, something that every employer is looking for. And these soft skills are transferable. These are some that are ones managers are looking for. If you look for a person with good communication skills, that is so important. Are they flexible? Are they adaptable to the situation? Can you give examples of that as an employee? How is your work ethic? Have you had good experiences with being on time, coming in, helping others, offering? And are you dependable? Are you punctual? There was an article in the Chicago Tribune, even last Sunday, that talked about soft skills and talked about a lot of these things: dependability, punctuality, teamwork, collaboration, and these interpersonal skills. And I will tell you, all of these, having all of these soft skills and trying all the time is exhausting. It's difficult. So you really have to work at it, and you have to work at it really as hard as you work at your hard skills, which are the things like learning the computer skills or systems that employers are asking you to learn. Soft skills are a little different, but they also can move from job to job. Time management, problem solving, critical thinking, In this day and age, in our country, especially now, conflict resolution. We are so divided in so many ways that it's so important to bring the skill of conflict resolution to the workplace. And then, of course, manners, that's always important from kindergarten on, or even earlier. And then empathy, or this emotional intelligence, which we can talk about. This is something also, emotional intelligence. This next slide is something that is also relatively new. Years and years ago, you didn't hear as much about it. I recall a book by Stephen Covey, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And it really was, I think, groundbreaking, because it talked about, for instance, the ability to recognize and understand someone's point of view before you share your own or seek your own understanding, and managing your own emotions. How often are we hearing of people who are having trouble just managing their own emotions? I'm sure COVID didn't help that situation at all, but we're seeing it in the schools. We're seeing emotions taking over, people having reactivity instead of looking at trying to resolve their conflicts. And emotional intelligence recognizes and understands how these emotions influence not only your emotions, but also the feelings of others. And you know, when you meet people and you get to work with people, and the years go on, when you look back on them, and or somebody mentions their name, you get that feeling of, oh yeah, they were easy to work with, they were kind. And you rarely think about what their skill level was in terms of the hard skills. According to Career Builder, 71% of employers value emotional intelligence in an employee over their IQ. Now, isn't that interesting? That's a big percentage of employers that are looking for people who are kind, who are easy to work with, who are teammates, who can manage their emotions. And 75% are more likely to promote an employee with a higher EQ, emotional equivalent, over someone with a higher IQ. 75%. Think about that for a moment, and think about how important it is to develop your soft skills. Some components of emotional intelligence: self-awareness, situational awareness, the situation around you, the self-management of your emotions, and your filter. You know, people talk about, I lost my filter. Well, a filter is that moment between what you're thinking and want to say and what you actually say it. And you need to filter that through and make sure your filter is strong, because sometimes words can be not only hurtful, they can jeopardize your job. So self-management, social awareness, who are you working with? How can you get along with them better? And relationship management, of course, is very important with every relationship, your personal relationships as well as your work relationships. So just to differentiate a little bit between hard and soft skills, dude, what is the difference between hard skills and soft skills? Hard skills are easy to measure and define. So that would be, you know, do I have certification in Microsoft Office? Can I do the job on the computer? Do I come, for instance, with a nursing background, with a degree in nursing and some skills and some experience? Those are hard skills. Soft skills are a little harder to judge. They really are. And the next slide says hard skills are those specific abilities required to do a job, typically acquired through education and experience. And so hard skills is what you come on your resume touting, and your accomplishments and your past experience and your education. Soft skills, combination of people, social, and communication skills. And these are emotional intelligence and personality traits. And one more point on not underestimating soft skills. The next slide talks about 92% of talent professionals. We see that here. And then 85% of job success comes from hard skills is important. Don't want to be late. I don't want to say that's not as important. But a lack of soft skills may look like the following. Can you hear me?
You were a little choppy, you're going in and out, but right now we're hearing you.
Sorry about that. Oh, we're okay. All right. Thank you, Matt. A lack of soft skills may look like, first of all, the lady on the left is racing and papers are dropping behind her. She's always late. She's always coming in and exasperated and not doing a good time management. The second little box is a young man who's talking continuously, blah, 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 and never hearing what other people are saying. The third one is it looks like an employer who's berating an employee, talking about you're not getting it done on time, you're past the deadline, and the deadline was a long time ago, and what's wrong with you? The one on the lower left is a person who's questioning everything, who doesn't seem to have any self-management, who can come along and try to figure things out for themselves and always asking too many questions. The one in the middle is the one which is very concerning, and that's when people dig in their heels and go on one side or the other and just stay there and don't ever hear the other person's point of view. And then the one on the left, or the one on the right, is the person with their fingers in their ears because they don't want to take advice and they don't feel that they have to take advice. They're not interested in learning anything new and are resistant to working in a team environment. So the next slide is, which soft skills should I focus on? Well, like any other self-assessment, consider where you're strong and where you need improvement. And go over that list, take some time, get in a quiet place and sit and relax and look at all of them and be an honest judge of what you think you need to improve upon. On the other hand, an outside perspective provides insight into these areas. So if you have family, friends who you trust, mentors, supervisors, coworkers, ask them where you're stronger and where you really need to focus on improving. And then compare that list most needed for your career path. One of the things that helps with this is a simple Google search, which can highlight soft skills that benefit a specific line of work. For instance, customer service would need a lot of soft skills. And the health professions, for instance, you need empathy, you need caring, you need compassion. And one of the places you can look to find a lot of that is ONET Online, which I would encourage all of you anyway to look at because it has a wealth of information on looking for your next job and in addition to soft skills. So I encourage you, ONET Online, it's a wealth of information. The tools to explore these soft skills on ONET Online is the next slide. And as you can see here, dancers, athletes, sports competitors, carpenters, it's actually a little hard to see, but it does list the skills that are covered with a number of occupations. So plug in the occupation you're looking for, and it will show you the soft skills custom list, and then occupations with some related skills. So I thought that was pretty valuable. Now, the next slide is how can I prove I have soft skills? And you can do that through letters of recommendation by those who know you, who you trust, and some of the LinkedIn skills and endorsements. So you can add skills to your profile, and then there's some there that will give you the soft skills that are needed for those particular jobs. And Mike is going to take over and tell us how we can develop some of these soft skills. So I will turn it over to my co-presenter, Mike.
And thank you, Jan. I think it's really important, and just one step back on the endorsements, is that whatever endorsements you seek, and we see a lot of those, particularly on Indeed, and that they're credible. You want to make sure that those endorsements are coming from folks that surely could speak to your talents and to your skills, and make sure they're credible. So when we talk about developing soft skills, I look at it as your personality, and how do you enhance your personality and develop those skills. And there's multiple ways of doing that. It talks about a course. Jan and I would surely promote job coaches, because we do a lot of that for the PRC. And I think that as we work with clients, we're able to learn more about them and find out what type of skills they have as they communicate with us. So real life experience, for sure. But I think it's important that OLINK that was just presented is a way to really go in and look at the kind of job you're looking at and how you might best find what soft skills are needed there. Oftentimes, I think people will find out that they may not have the soft skills for a particular career. And I'll share some of that a little later here with some experience that I had with folks coming from different line of work and trying to adapt into another line of work. So, okay. And next slide, Matt. Communication. What an overused word at times. Everybody, I'm a great communicator. I love to communicate. Obviously, it's important to be able to communicate on different levels. And this talks about face-to-face, which has become difficult at times, particularly for newer people into the workforce because of COVID. When you had 2 to 3 years of not meeting with people and being remote, face-to-face as we are virtually now, isn't the same as being face-to-face in a room or an office in a meeting discussion where your movements, the way you're fidgeting, whatever those kind of things that come up. Emails, presentations are always a great way. It's always nice to get back into the presentation game and being able to do things like this just to kind of continue to practice your skills. I think the other thing, it's not down here, is texting. So many young people today are what I call text monsters. And I would add that I was fortunate enough to and I'm dating myself, to be in the original cellular phone business way back when, in the 80s, when cellular phones came in, and I was able to text before anybody else because we were testing systems in that. And my adult children today often will say, "You're a cryptic texter, Dad. You know, sometimes we have to read into your text." Very true. So I think there's things that you can do to communicate. The thing why I bring up texting is it only takes a few seconds to say thank you to somebody via text, or to welcome them, or to, maybe introduce yourself to somebody that way. I was speaking to a young manager the other day, and he said it's interesting that his boss will text him during a meeting and say, this is a key point, be alert. And there's those kinds of things that never would we see that happen years ago, because one, it may not be considered appropriate. But today, a lot of these different types of communication are surely available. And as long as it's not inappropriate in a meeting or considered outside the box, the norm for the organization, they're good ways to communicate and highlight points. So I think that's an important part. Next, Matt. Thank you. Positive relationships. People always say I'm good at developing relationships. I think the important thing about this is, are they positive relationships? And how do you define positive relationships? And I think that part of that is, there was a saying, I'm just going to read it here: no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. A lot of people have taken credit for it, even as far back as one of our presidents many, many years ago. But the point being that, you may know a lot, you may be very smart, you may be very good at what you do, but people still want to know you care about them. And this is a great list of ways to show people that you care. And I've always been a promoter of doing the little things that tend to grab people's attention. Now, some people would tell you, yes, you owned your own business, you had a few hundred people working for you at a time. How did you make that all happen? Well, it's very easy in these types of ways to connect with them, via lunch, via, we used to call them donuts now. I don't know what they're bringing to the current meetings, but you bring in a couple dozen donuts to meetings and just let people know that you care a little bit. And it particularly means a lot when it's coming from folks that aren't particularly leading the meeting. If you thought about the last time that you were at a function and somebody did something really nice that wasn't expected, and what an impact that has on you and how you felt about that relationship. A lot of people like to connect outside of work. Recently, speaking with an educator who was considering the possibility of looking into another job, but said, I just love the people that I work with. They're kind, considerate, we have similar interests. And gee, I'd hate to leave them. So you could see how that has such an impact on work retention as well. So those relationships that you have, particularly positive relationships, surely continue to promote who you are, and often very important in retention to a company. We move on here to pardon me, my light's going a little here. As far as, adaptability. Yeah. Outside your comfort zone, new skills, ways to find out how to be a change, an agent of change, we used to call it. I think there's ways that folks surely can find ways to learn and become better at helping people, assisting new employees, new technologies, things that, as Jan previously mentioned, sometimes you're always interviewing for your next job when you're in a workplace. I know when we hired, oftentimes we'd look a job ahead, meaning I might be hiring for a call center rep, but I would also be looking at a call center lead one. Does this person have the ability to grow in the position? Because we needed that type of person in the future. And sometimes the future was 6 to 8 months, depending on turnover and depending on growth. So I think that part of it's very important as well. So you want to be very flexible and be open to new skills. Leadership, I think, is the next point. And I think that as folks think about leadership, we always think about the person in the front of the room, or maybe even in a session like this, who are the two people in the picture. But I think it really goes beyond that. And in a good person, a good leader can be somebody that participates and thanks people for good ideas. And you take it outside of work, where you might be a volunteer. I think, Jan, we see lots of people from local companies volunteering at the PRC as employees of a company day. And it's so nice to see those kind of folks representing their company and doing such nice things in the community. Coaches, how many folks are out there coaching their children in activities? And the other nice thing about this too is that it's a good way to network. I'm sure that people that are out, I know when I coached son and daughter's athletics, that you met so many people. Hey, what do you do? Hey, this is what I do. Oh, really? Okay, I do this, and you start to network, which wasn't such a big deal back then, but today it's critical to be a good networker, and this is part of it. And some people say, well, if you're doing it for business, well, you do it for both. You do it for family, you do it for friends, you do it for the community, but you also know that there could be a little bit of a business opportunity there as well. And there's, excuse me, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm sorry. I don't know what that's about. Anyway, next one, Matt. Observation. I think too, when you're able to observe people that are really doing a good job, it's nice to let them know that. And I think that when you find people that are talented, particularly with soft skills, you could let them know and solicit their feedback. I think it's really important to be able to ask people how they develop some skills. I know there was a person that just I knew that just had a way of capturing people in a meeting. And people would say to her, boy, you have such great presentation skills. How'd you develop those? And she said, I practice and I practice. And so I think there's ways to observe skills like that, and what people surely can be very helpful. And it's nice to know that you can have a little bit of a mentor when you do engage somebody like that and ask them, hey, how did you develop those skills? And just a nice way to, again, to connect, and another way to communicate in a very positive way and build that positive relationship. Okay, feedback. Open to feedback. This is where today I think, and Jan mentioned the conflicts and people being split on in different ways, but I think we all have to feel that feedback is pretty positive. I think you have to be open to it. I think you have to get feedback from not only your manager, but also your coworkers. I often found that coworkers had much better feedback for me than even managers, because they could say, hey, Mike, we love this about you, but, you can be a little impatient. And admittedly, yes, I can. So I think that kind of feedback is very positive, and I think it's a good way to get some feedback, particularly on soft skills. You saw that list, and a list that I would print out, and I did, that you can ask people and say, what do you think about how I collaborate? How do I resolve conflict? Do you find me as a positive person in a meeting, and how do I come across? So I think you really need to be open to feedback and how that exists. Resume. How do we highlight? I think the most critical thing here is to be able to support any soft skills that you put in your resume. And sometimes you'll see soft skills listed. Here's my soft skills. Okay, and we can go off that list that we had, and we can list half a dozen soft skills that you feel are important. I think, one, make sure they're important to the job that you're going for. And secondly, that those skills are supported in the body of your resume. In other words, the activities, action, results all support the soft skills that you have listed. So if you say I'm a great collaborator and team player, and nothing in your resume talks about being on a team, or that you were a team leader, or that you were involved in team XYZ, you can't support the soft skill. And so a lot of things you'll read about soft skills and resume is you must support the soft skills in your resume with actions and activities. And the next part is talking about interviews, and the same thing. And it talks about SAR, which is situation, action, result. I would take that a step further. I was fortunate enough to be trained in what they call target selection years back, not that many, but years back. And we had to do that in our company. And it was really a great week-long session to learn it. And we can only interview in our company if you were trained in this target selection. And it's a behavioral interview process. And it takes the SAR, the situation, action, result. And we even took it a step further. We took it into SOAR, which was the situation. And what was the opportunity? Then the action and result. And we found that adding the opportunity really gave people a chance to be creative in their answers. And what we really found in our interview process, asking them, tell me about a time. And that's how this process works. So it would be, tell me about a time you had a conflict in your team, and how did you resolve it? And the person would go through the situation, the opportunity, the action, and the result. And I think that's a really good way in an interview to be able to talk to people about, here's what I did. And if it's an interview that isn't behavioral based, which is kind of unusual today, but it does happen, that you can use this SAR as a way to answer questions in a interview, that you can highlight enthusiasm, conflict resolution, collaboration, and those soft skills that you feel that are important here. So I think balance, which is I believe the next, the last slide here, right? Yes. Okay. I kind of look at that as taking your personality and then what can you do to go beyond that? How can you develop that? So one phrase I like is I'm a talented personality, meaning I have skills, but I'm also a personality. And I think those types of phrases you could use. I listen and I care. And here's examples of how I listen and I care. So I think that soft skills are very easy to balance with hard skills. And I think it's very appropriate to balance the two and be able to say, I'm really good at IT. But I also have a personality. And while it shows in your resume, it shows in your interview. And so I believe that gives you an opportunity to really present yourself as a balanced person. And I think that's, if you're going to take anything away from today, that it's important to be both. I know they can teach you their systems and do those kind of things. And I think employers want to know that you have the capability to learn, but that you also have a personality, which also allows you to even learn more from other people in the organization. So, any questions?